have a cup of tea with me today for like the first time in what feels like forever. Even though this is Books of Tea Time, I feel like I never drink tea on camera, which is a crime, so. Hey there, book friends. I'm Addie, and this is Books and Tea Time, and today we are going to be talking about my nonfiction TBR. So I don't often make like monthly TBRs. I do like have a seasonal stack that I like change regularly, but for the most part, I like to have one nonfiction book at least going at a given time, and like I'll take my time with it and read it as quickly or as slowly as I need so that like I'm learning, because for me, a large part of nonfiction reading is reading a book to learn something. So these are all of the nonfiction books that are really high up on my list that I could pick up at any given moment as my next nonfiction read. And I thought that it would be really cool to help me decide what to pick up next, because there are quite a few books on this list, to share them with you and like get a feel for what you guys want me to read first and what you want me to review and talk about. So just grabbing from the first one at the top of the stack here, and that is Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. So last summer I read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, and I really wanted to read this because this is actually his first publication, but I let my dad read it first because I know that I'm gonna tab it all up, and I wanted to like give the courtesy of letting him read it first so that like he could read it sans tabs. He just recently finished it like a month or two ago, so it's finally in my hands. I can read it and tackle it whenever I feel the desire to. And this is another piece of anti-racist literature, but also in part a history text, because it is the definitive history of racist ideas in America, and I believe it takes it by chunks of time. Oh yes, this is very interesting. So each part has several chapters, and each part is named after a historical figure. You have Cotton Mather, Thomas Jefferson, William Lloyd Garrison, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Angela Davis. And each chapter is like a deep dive into a specific topic that illuminates the history of racism and racist ideas in the United States. I think I'm really going to enjoy this as a like counterpiece to How to Be an Anti-Racist, because How to Be an Anti-Racist is more about the present, and while he does use historical facts and stats from history and stats from the present, it's mostly about anti-racist policy in the present and definitions and how we can approach it in the present moment, and a little bit of like memoir-y style things about Kendi's life as well. Whereas this one I think is a deep dive into the history, and I think that paired together will really allow me to be better informed and to be better at discussing this with my peers, with my family, with my friends, and to have all of this knowledge and facts on hand and to have read it and annotated it, I think is really going to help me a lot. My dad said it was really, really good, and so I'm excited to pick this up. So yeah, Stamped from the Beginning, first on the list. So I picked this up about 2 months ago at Target because I had just graduated from my undergrad degree, and I was struck with the reality that I'm an adult, that I need to become more like an adult and do more adult things. And I thought that this was the perfect book for starting that journey, and it is Atomic Habits by James Clear, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. And I thought that this was a perfect way to like break some of my older habits that I want to get out of, but also to start and implement new habits in my life that make me feel like I've got my life together, even if I don't. Noelle Gallagher read this and said that she really liked it and found a lot of useful information. So hopefully this helps me to build some habits that I like, and I also like the reflectiveness of the cover here. Really fun. Additionally, another recommendation from Noelle Gallagher is Stephen King's On Writing. When I was younger, all I ever wanted my whole life was to be a writer. I wanted to be a novelist. I wanted to write books. I wrote books when I was little and when I was in like middle school and even in high school, and then I kind of stopped. But I really, really want to write a book one day, even if it's not like over the next year. I would love to be an author at some point in my life, and so I thought this was the perfect time to sit down and read Stephen King's thoughts on writing. at the very least, I hope that it gets me in the zone, in the mood, gets me motivated to write. And at best, I hope that it has some really helpful tips to get me started and help me to be successful in that endeavor, whether or not it's this year or like 10 years down the road. I just thought that it would be cool to have on hand. After that, I really want to get to this, not only because the cover is so intriguing, but because I fell in love with this author last summer. It is Mediocre by Ijeoma Oluo. So Ijeoma Oluo is the author of So You Want to Talk About Race, and I read that last summer, really loved it because it's great for giving you the foundations of having conversations with people in your life about race. Mediocre came out in November of 2020, and I remember I pre-ordered it and I really wanted to read it, and then school reading kind of just pushed it to the side. And I'm just so excited because the tagline, or like the byline, is "The Dangerous Legacy of White Male America." And I feel like this is just precisely what I need in my life. Kimberly Crenshaw blurbed it on the back. Like, are we kidding? It says, Oluo masterfully diagnoses the pervasive plague of white mediocrity. Mediocre serves as a call to action for every person, regardless of race or gender, to actively resist white male mediocrity's hold. That is Kimberly Crenshaw's comment. Sounds amazing. And I mean, the cover is amazing. I love this yellow. Next, I think this is the only memoir I have on this list, which is kind of surprising. I usually like to have a couple memoirs on my list, but I have The Dragons, the Giant, the Women by Waitu Moore. This is a memoir that takes place from when the author is like in early childhood up until the present, I believe, and it chronicles their move from Liberia to the United States and eventually going back, and life in Liberia as a child and being separated from her mother, who I believe is in the United States at the time, and then being an immigrant in the United States and being a woman in the United States, being a Black woman in the United States, and then eventually returning. So I think there's a lot of nuance to discuss there, and I've heard really good things about Moore's other fictional works, so I think that the writing is going to be wonderful, and I anticipate really enjoying this, because when I do finally sit down to read memoirs, I often really enjoy them. It sounds amazing, and the title is amazing. Immediately, the title, the cover, the author, the contents, I'm sure, are going to be up to par with all of those previously mentioned things. So yes, The Dragons, the Giant, the Women, love it. So it's actually a book that I found in a little library when I was walking my dog, and the title just popped out at me, so I had to go over and I ended up grabbing it. So I do need to get to this soon so that I can return it to my little library. That is The Birth of the Pill: How Four Crusaders Reinvented Sex and Launched a Revolution by Jonathan Eig, I don't know. But this is all about the history of contraception, and I hope sex positivity and things of that nature. This sounds so fascinating, and when I was a junior, I wrote a paper and did a lot of research on the women's rights movement and women's reproductive health in the late 1800s, and so I know a little bit about some of the people that are mentioned on the back of this book. I'm really excited to read this and to see what I can learn and to study the history of contraception. Sounds really fascinating, and I'm just so happy that I came across it in a little free library. After that, I have had this book for like 8 years. This might be, it's not the oldest book that I have, but it's definitely up there, and that is Beyond Words: What Animals Think and Feel by Carl Safina. I actually started this and read like the first like 5 or 6 chapters a very long time ago, but I do want to start over and reread and annotate, because it's all about animals and how they communicate and animal language and how that works, and it's a combination of 3 studies, and I believe the author like went and spoke with people and scientists who were conducting these studies in different areas of the world. But the first section is all about elephants, I believe African elephants. The second section is about orca whales, and the third section is about wolves. So you study the particular language and communication and interactive system between those animals in each section of the book, have this bank of knowledge about animal behavior and animal communication, and to break down the binary that society has constructed where it's either human or animal, when humans are animals and then there are non-human animals. So fascinating. Can't wait to read this and annotate it and tab it up and then inevitably gush to you guys about it, because no one else is gonna want to listen to me go on about elephant communication. Sorry. Next, we've got this chunky monkey. This might be the longest book on here. Stand from the Beginning is long, but this one is also like almost 700 pages, and that is The Mad Woman in the Attic, the woman writer in the 19th century literary imagination, by the ones and only Sandra M. Gilbert and Susan Gubar. These women are my heroes. They are literary critics and geniuses, and just, oh my god, everything that they write, it inspires me. I've read excerpts from this book, but I bought the whole thing actually in San Francisco because I saw it on the shelf and I just could not say no. So while I have read some of this, I haven't read all of it. So I would love to go back and reread all of it. There's stuff on Austen. There's a couple sections on the different Bronte sisters. There's one about Emily, Anne, and Charlotte, I think, all individually. Let's see what we've got here. Mary Shelley, George Eliot. I think almost exclusively white women, but women. It's a literature nerd's dream, and that's what I am. So I bought it, and I'm gonna read it at some point in my life. Next, I just recently picked this up. I saw this at a bookstore when I went with my friend to a bookstore in Harrisburg. We went to Midtown Scholar Bookstore in Harrisburg, and I saw this on the shelf, and I just could not resist. So, if you don't know this about me, I wrote my senior thesis project in my undergrad degree on Lord Byron and Philip Pullman. And so, anytime I come across anything that has to do with Lord Byron, I'm immediately intrigued. And so, I saw this book called Lady Byron and Her Daughters, which is all about Lord Byron's wife, which his wife for a very, very brief period of time, after their split, their public divorce, and her daughters, one of whom is Ada Lovelace, who invented the first computer. So I am obviously, and not surprisingly, super excited to read this book. And it was published very, very recently. I want to say in like 2015. So still published really recently, which is cool to see that stuff is still being published about Byron, about Lady Byron, and I don't know, I'm just really excited to read this and to nerd out about it with my my professor and my friend. This is definitely a top contender for the nonfiction that I'm going to pick up next, because I'm just so interested that I'm just like, I want to read it so bad. So, you know, I just realized that I forgot my tea was over here. This is another book that was inspired by a class that I took at college. I took a class all about the Romantic period and the environment. My professor recommended this book to the class, and I bought it, and I read one chapter for my final paper for that class, but I didn't read the rest of it, but I really, really want to, because it's so interesting. And that book is The Little Ice Age: How Climate Made History. So this is about a period of time between 1300 and 1850 when there was like a mini ice age across the entire globe, and how people interpreted that, how it affected like the economy and like fishing, and how it just changed the world permanently after that, how it changed literature, how it changed like the psyche of particular people in history. Is this incredibly niche? Yes. Is it incredibly nerdy? Yes. But that is right up my alley. If you're into that kind of stuff, if it sounds interesting to you, I do recommend it. It's not super long, and it's really neat. You know, it's learning about something that, like, if I hadn't taken this class, I might have gone years and years of my life without ever hearing about this. I might have never heard about it. And it's just so fascinating to me. The nerdiness continues, because this is another book that I read the introduction to this book for my senior seminar course, and I loved it so much, and I told my professor, and she was so sweet, and she gifted me a copy of it because she is an angel sent from heaven. She is an academic literary angel, and that is Becoming Human, Matter and Meaning in an Anti-Black World by Zakaya Iman Jackson. First of all, the cover. I mean, are we seeing this? You're seeing this, right? Because this is like the most stunning cover I own. So this is a work of post-humanist theory and critical analysis. Let me just read the back of this to you. Rewriting the pernicious, enduring relationship between blackness and animality in the history of Western science and philosophy, Becoming Human breaks open the rancorous debate between Black critical theory and post-humanism. Through the cultural terrain of literature by Toni Morrison, Nalo Hopkinson, Audre Lorde, and Octavia Butler, the art of Wangechi Mutu and Esram Lege, and the oratory of Frederick Douglass, Zakaya Iman Jackson both critiques and displaces the racial logic that has dominated scientific thought since the Enlightenment. As I said, I read the introduction, and I am so excited to dive into the chapters, and especially the chapter on Toni Morrison, because Toni Morrison is one of my favorite authors. Beloved is one of my favorite books of all time. Also, increasingly, post-humanism is becoming more and more attractive to me as like a sub-genre of study that I would love to pursue in graduate school. So having a work of post-humanist literature that directly intersects with critical theory, critical race theory, is really wonderful, and I think I'm going to learn a lot from it. And you know, I do miss school already, which I know is the nerdiest thing I've ever said, but I do already miss class discussions and readings like this. So having it on hand, even if I don't really necessarily have anyone to talk about it with, it makes me happy. Last but certainly not least, we have Celtic Myth and Magic by Aidan McCoy. Again, the cover. This is just a book all about the Celtic tradition, Celtic mythology, and magic. There's a huge appendix with a dictionary of all the gods, goddesses, heroes, and creatures from Celtic mythology, both on the continent, Pan-Celtic, Irish, Welsh, Cornish, Breton. There's a section all about ritual and the Celtic pantheon, path working, gods and goddesses. There's a bunch of references. There's a chapter about music. The back says, achieve your magical goals with the mythic power of over 300 Celtic deities. I love it. It brings me so much joy. I am a little Irish gal, and I study the Irish language, so anything about like pagan Celtic lore and mythology and culture and language, it brings up something ancient in my soul that I just glow with excitement, and I hope that's coming through on camera, because I literally, just owning this book makes me feel more powerful. That is that. Those are all of the nonfiction books that I want to read. Am I going to get to them all this year? No, but they're high up on my priority list. I really am interested in learning and reading and engaging with all of these texts, so let me know down below in the comments which one you want me to read first, or one that you were really excited to hear me talk about. If you made it to the end of this video, why don't you comment down below a shamrock, or like the Irish flag, something Irish, since this was the final book and I'm such a dork about it and I love it so much. That would be really great. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for stopping by and visiting my channel. It really means the world to me. I love being here and chatting with you all, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if that's your jam, and I'll see you in my next video. Happy reading, happy writing, and happy living. Bye!